Welcome back to the series of lectures on floriculture. Today we will talk about collection and maintenance of whatever plant that is an ornamental we are cultivating either domestically or commercially. Essentially, the collection of the plants in terms of their propagules, that is seed, bulb, rhizome, or sometimes even a whole plant, can be categorized into three distinct groups. One, those which are annual plants, that means where the life cycle of a plant starts from a seed in one season of a plant of the year and is reproducing the same seed at the end of that particular season. Second category is of bulbous plants, that is those plants which can perennate for as long as a bulb can survive, and this bulb in turn also produces progeny at the end of each growing season. And third are those plants which are referred to as rhizomatous plants, wherein the same rhizome, even though structurally remains same, but can produce sub-branches and branchlets, which in turn have a potential to reproduce almost an identical or a similar plant. The fourth and the most important category is of those plants which are either shrubs or trees and have a survival potential for roughly estimated more than 10, sometimes even more than 20 years. In such cases, we can maintain them as and where they are for as long and for as we want to preserve them. In all these categories, the collection patterns vary, and this in turn is determined by the method that has been adopted. I will first come to the collection of seeds. Now, imagine we are going to collect a seed of a plant which essentially is maturing in the month of June or July. Now, is it important to collect the seeds in June itself or July itself, or should we initiate the collection of seeds from the time its seeds start maturing? Ordinarily, at any stage of the collection of seeds, they may show an important aspect, that is viability and vigor. However, it has been seen that when the plant shows signs of senescence, here I will explain what senescence means. Senescence actually refers to the change in color of the foliage, that is leaves, from its normal green color to slightly pale or yellowish, as you can see. It means that at that stage the flowers are actually reaching a stage of maturity, and with that maturity the seeds that have been produced by these flowers are actually reaching a stage of harvest. It has been seen that if at the stage of senescence seeds are collected, one must always identify the changed fruits, that is if it is a capsule or a corp or sometimes a dry bulbous fruit, one should see what change in the color has taken place from its young stage to mature stage. For example, if the fruit is green in young stage, it turns pale or yellowish in mature stage. That indicates that the seeds inside it are mature. So, any person who wants to collect the seeds should manually collect each of these mature capsules or fruits, so that he can actually collect them and preserve them in a container for as long as the plant completely comes to the end of the life cycle. At that stage, it is important to spread out these collected portions, that is either the seed itself or the capsules or sometimes even the fruiting bodies, and then try to dry them so that the seeds automatically come out of the fruiting bodies. Ordinarily, sometimes in order to facilitate this collection, some collectors tend to break the fruits. It has been seen that breakage of the fruits tends to damage the seeds also. Therefore, it is important that after collection these fruits are allowed to dry up and rupture on their own, so that after they dry up and rupture, winnowing practice, that is exposure to low velocity wind, can separate whatever light portions, that is husk and other portions are, can move away from the grains and seeds. After this has been carried out, one should try to separate each segment of the seeds, that is each variety of the seed, so that he can store them for as long as he wants to use them. Ordinarily, the best method of storage is in dark containers, especially those wherein sweating does not take place. If we keep these seeds in glass containers, it has been seen, because of high humidity and high temperatures, the seeds tend to actually develop certain fungal diseases, which in turn destroys their survival potential. Therefore, normal practice is to store these seeds in airtight containers where the normal temperatures are at a stage where the seeds do not dry beyond a certain level. After this has been achieved in case of seedy plants, it is important to randomly inspect them whether they have retained their potential to germinate also. In that case, if we have a huge container containing larger quantity of seed, one can take out a random sample of say 100 seeds and try to sow them in a plate, what is normally referred to as testing plate, and see whether these seeds give rise to seedlings. That shows that the viability potential has been retained. However, in case there is any drawback in this viability that reveals that the storage potential of either the seeds or the conditions in which the seed has been stored is slightly negative, in such cases it is important to replace that stored seeds immediately, so that the progenial development does not in any way get affected negatively. Now, once this has also been established, it is important to store these seeds for specific durations. There are two important reasons for this. One, it has been seen that if we have an plant which has a tremendous potential in terms of producing variable colors in its flowers, I can quote examples of petunia, I can quote examples of pansy, wherein we find that the flowers in those plants show tremendous variability in colors. Yet, if we continuously grow the same plant for 3 or 4 years, at the end of that period, we find that there is loss of density, loss of diversity and loss of production in those. It is because it has been seen, because of excessive storage, each seed has a potential to lose its vigor, viability as well as diversity. Therefore, once we store seeds, it is important to categorize them into 3 distinct groups. One is known as base collection, that is a seed which can be stored for as long as we want, that means roughly estimated for more than 100 years. Second is known as active collection. Active collection is a seed which can be stored for only 20 years. And third is a working collection, that is a seed which can be regularly sown. The importance of this is because if we lose any aspect in the active collection of the seeds, we can go back to the working collection. And if we lose aspect in that also, we can go back to the base collection. That means whatever variety we have developed, whatever variety we have used, we can have its seed stored for as long as 100 years. And it has been seen that such storage has helped in maintenance of whatever diverse forms of ornamentals we have stored for as long as we want. Then, after this collection has been stored, it is important that in each of these collections, that is active collection, base collection and working collection, we must always randomly carry out checks whether they have retained the potential for which they have been stored. Then, coming now to the second group of plants, that is those which have rhizomes or bulbs or sometimes even the underground rooty portions as organs of propagation. how to maintain them. Ordinarily, sometimes we have seen that a person or a commercial producer who cultivates them wants to maintain them in an area where he cultivates them. But it has been seen that if these plants get exposed to the conditions to which they are not adapted, for example, if a dry habitat plant is almost suddenly exposed to moist conditions, its rhizome gets destroyed within no time. If a bulbous plant suitable to elevated or orchid conditions, we see that in that case, if there is rainfall or sudden moisture in the soil, the bulb's rhizomes get immediately destroyed. That is why in this case also a fundamental concept is that at the end of the growth period, that is when the flowering phase has come over and then the unfavorable season, either winter or sometimes autumn or sometimes a rainy season, that is monsoon, is stepping in. At that stage, one must immediately dig these rhizomatous or bulbous portions out so that they are separated, thinned out and dried. And during this drying process, two important aspects are important. That is, first of all, how we should try to dry them. Should we expose them directly to heat, artificial heat, or should we provide them normal temperatures for drying, that is the normal sunlight or under shady conditions. Ordinarily, it has been seen that the natural heat is much more preferable to the artificial heat. The reason for this is that artificial heat sometimes drains out excessive moisture content from these, which in turn destroys their survival pattern. That is why what normally is advisable, that once a bulbous portion or rhizomatous portion has been harvested, it should be dried first in shade or under sunny conditions, and then once the mud around the rhizome is completely dry, it should be manually removed, so that during that mud removal or dry soil removal, no part of the bulb or the rhizome or the bulbous portion gets destroyed. And once it has been removed, one should then try to categorize them into groups. We will see ordinarily a bulb which may be larger in size at the end of one growth period produces a bulblet at the base of it. So that we will have now an ancestor and a progeny produced from the same plant. In that case, what is ordinarily preferable is try to group them on the basis of the size, on the basis of the shape, as well as on the basis of the productive potential. So that if we have bigger size varieties separated on one side, smaller on the other side and intermediate on the other side, it will automatically show us which particular bulb or rhizome has much better productive potential in comparison to others, so that one can cultivate the normal size or large size bulbs in first row, followed by average size bulbs and smaller size bulbs, so that this will in turn give a decorative show to the bed in which we cultivate them. Then after this categorization has also been carried out, question arises, how do we store them for as long as we want? In this case also, like seeds, there are ways. Sometimes we can store them as such in airtight polythene bags. However, it has been seen that in these polythene bags, sometimes because of high humidity, because of high temperatures or because of higher pressures, excessive moisture can develop, which in turn can destroy the storage potential of these underground portions. Second option is to keep them distributed evenly in a storehouse or a pot house or a shed, wherein we maintain them in such a way so that the room remains properly ventilated and the room does not have excessive temperatures or excessive humidity at any stage of that storage. However, in this case, it has been seen that sometimes the other biotic interferences, that is bacterial growth, fungal growth, pesticidal growth, or sometimes insects as well as rats, etc., tend to feed upon these rhizomatous portions and destroy them. However, a modern concept is, once we harvest them, we try to create what is referred to as storage underground pit. Storage underground pit is a literal cave created, a small cave created, whose bottom is covered by ash, and on that ash we try to deposit certain branchy dried fragments, and on those fragments we try to separate thinly these rhizomatous portions, bulbous portions and other such materials, so that once we cover that particular pit for as long as we want to store them, they do not get exposed directly either to excessive heat, excessive humidity or excessive moisture, and we can bring them out and transplant them as and when desired. It has been seen that in any condition, be it moist condition, be it dry condition, be it hot condition, be it wet condition, such storage is much suitable in comparison to other storage methods. It has been seen that at the proper season, this pit can be opened up and these can immediately transplanted to the areas in which we want to cultivate them. Then comes the third option, that is where we can actually store or maintain the perennial ornamentals like roses, like evergreen bushes, like other ornamental plants which have a potential to survive in their habitats as long as we want them. It has been seen that for almost all these plants, one important aspect is to actually prune their excessive growth, that is branches, branchlets or adjacent plants and their branches, so that during unfavorable conditions, that is either extremely hot weather or extremely cold winter, these plants can survive. It can be shown by revealing these evergreens and rosaceous plants which have been pruned prior to the inception of the winter. It has been seen that in winter their pruning actually helps and facilitates their survival irrespective of the conditions they face in terms of heavy snowfall, heavy rainfall or extremely low temperature. Then these branches, the cuttings that have been made, in turn are commercially useful also. They can be used for multiplication purposes as such. It has been seen that if the prune branching, that is branch of an evergreen tree, branch of a rose, branch of any such shrub or bush which is ornamentally used, is actually planted under muddy conditions in a nursery, they have a potential to produce rootlets. That is, as you can see, a branch which has been pruned from a tree, from a shrub or a herb, has been planted in a nursery, and at the base of that, because of the incision that has been given, we find that small rootlets develop. Now, it means that this cutting of a rosaceous plant, of an evergreen shrub, has helped not only maintain it under extremely difficult winter conditions, but also helped us to actually multiply them, propagate them and automatically facilitate us to have much higher number of the plants for commercial as well as domestic usage. Then we come to the third aspect, that is where we use trees for ornamental purposes. For example, we have umbrella tree, an important tree that we grow as a fundamental structure within a garden. Now, question is, how do we maintain it, or how long can we maintain it? Now, here one must remember that umbrella tree actually is a hybrid, where the main axis belongs to one plant and the top crown belongs to another plant. That automatically means we have combined two different aspects into one, and then we want to maintain it for as long as we can. In this case, there is only one requirement, and that is that we should always, at the end of the growing season, that means at the end of the autumn or at the initiation of the winter, we must actually prune whatever excessive growth it has developed, because it is seen that in winter these excessive branches or branchlets or sometimes even a division of the main axis, sometimes because of heavy rainfall, heavy snowfall, or even high velocity winds can destroy the basic structure of the plant also. Therefore, it is recommended that ornamental trees should also be pruned prior to the initiation of the winter, so that pruning not only helps us to design the structure of the tree, but also facilitates its survival under extremely harsh climatic as well as ecodynamic conditions. Similarly, if we look at commercially productive fruit trees, which are sometimes becoming a part of our gardens and lawns, in that case also it has been seen that pruning should be carried out at an initiation of the winter, so that pruning actually facilitates its survival. Now, coming to the most important part of this maintenance of the orchard or garden related ornamental plants is actually the part which is referred to as creeping ornamentals. Creeping ornamentals means which sometimes when planted in the vicinity of a wall, sometimes plants in the vicinity of a gate tend to climb the wall, sometimes even homes, and that climbing in turn maintains its specific structure. As you can have a look at this, this is a climbing plant which actually creeps on the surface of a wall, and this wall climbing plant can also be designed as per our requirements as well as also as per our needs. That requirement and need in turn actually gives a proper shape and structure to this particular creeping ornamental. It has been seen that sometimes at home, sometimes in commercial gardens, one can in turn create entry points, that is a gate or a small door can be actually created by allowing these creeping plants or climbing plants to grow in a circular form around that particular entry. This in turn actually not only facilitates their survival, but also facilitates the maintenance of them as per our own desires. It has been seen that almost in all the commercially recommended gardens or well established domestic gardens, or sometimes in academic institutions gardens, we find at many entry points such creeping plants have been used to decorate the entrances. On the basis of these parameters, I would recommend that whosoever is interested in decorating or using plants for decorative purposes should first of all try to understand the categories, their potential, their maintenance, as well as their pattern of survival, so that once he has knowledge of this, he would help not only himself but also facilitate the usage of these ornamentals for domestic and commercial purposes without any way hampering or depleting and deleting their productive potential. With these words, I culminate this third part of the lecture, that is how one should actually maintain different types of ornamentals. Thank you.